meeting of Midcoast Community Council for September 11th, 2019. Will the council members introduce themselves, starting on my left?
Dan Haggerty.
Tamar Powell.
Michelle Weil.
Claire Touton.
Glenn Erickson.
Dave Olson.
Barbara Mathewson.
Thank you. Let's start with the Board of Supervisors report, please. Ellie?
Sure. Good evening, Midcoast Community Council. Good evening, community members. My name is Ellie Dahlman, and I'm here on behalf of San Mateo County Supervisor Don Horsley to provide a few updates for you. I have one item, informational item to update you on, and then three upcoming events that I just wanted to bring to your attention as well. So the first item I have for you is an update on the San Mateo County Parks wildfire prevention work in Quarry Park. Just about exactly a month ago, the San Mateo County Parks and CAL FIRE began a project to reduce the risk of wildfire to neighboring communities by treating upwards of 100 acres of vegetation and creating fuel breaks throughout Quarry Park. Some of you may have seen, if you've been to Quarry Park recently or if you live nearby there, that work has begun, and it's being conducted between the hours of 7 and 2 p.m. Monday through Friday, and there are some trail closures that will be posted as necessary in order to be able to complete the work. But I'm happy to report that to date, approximately 27 acres have been treated, and large-scale projects such as this involve some inconvenience and short-term alteration of the landscape, but really will result in long-term ecological benefits for the native plant and animal communities, as well as the fire fuel, reducing the fire fuel. And in the coming months, they'll be surveying the area, looking for growth of native plants to assess how it's been impacted. But there's some before and after photos on the county parks webpage, and any project updates will also be posted on the project webpage. There's also an email list that you can sign up for if you're interested in receiving email updates, as well as contact information if you have any questions or concerns about the work. And then the three events that I have for you are, the first is coming up on September 18th. San Mateo County is celebrating Welcoming Week through a documentary series. And I brought a handful of flyers, which I'll leave some with the council and some out on the table. But the San Mateo County Office of Community Affairs Immigrant Services is providing a free screening of films throughout the county. And this film, called I Learn America, is a documentary that follows 5 immigrant teenagers through their high school journey. It will be happening September 18th at the Half Moon Bay Library, and tickets are free for that, so I'll leave those here for you. The second event I have for you is just to remind you all of the 15th annual San Mateo County Disaster Preparedness Day. Maybe I'll hold it for the camera here. Saturday, September 21st from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the San Mateo Event Center. It's a family-friendly event. You can explore fire trucks, other emergency response vehicles, including SWAT vehicles, and experience the Smoky Hall and Shake House, and a number of other fun activities, including classes on CPR, first aid, and more. So that is a free event, though there is a small fee for parking. And the third event that I have, I think I reminded you about at your last meeting, is just a reminder about the Office of Sustainability is hosting a Fix-It clinic in Pacifica on Saturday, October 5th from noon until 3 p.m. at the Pacifica Sanchez Library. And for those of you that haven't heard of Fix-It Clinic, basically, as I understand, anything that you have that is broken, that you are physically able to carry, you can bring to this Fix-It Clinic, and there will be some volunteers there that will help to attempt to fix your items so that we can reduce the amount of waste that goes into the landfill and really reuse the materials that we have. We're also, I think, always looking for volunteers, so if this is something that you'd be interested in volunteering to help out with, the Office of Sustainability contact information is on these flyers. We also have another staff person here who will be speaking to you later from the Office of Sustainability, Gordon Tong. He would be a great person to connect with as well. And with that, I don't have any other items. I'm happy to take any questions or comments from the council.
Are there any questions or comments? Any questions or comments from the public? Thank you, Ellie. People are very nicely doing speaker slips. Just as a reminder, if you want to speak about something not on the agenda or on the agenda, please fill out a slip and we'll call on you. If for some reason I forget to call on you, please remind me. And we're limited to 3 minutes apiece. Other government representatives, I see Highway Patrol is here.
Hello, everybody. Christopher Barshini, officer with the CHP. The only item I have that we're aware of is apparently somebody drew an unapproved crosswalk across the highway. So just wanted to let the council know that CHP and Caltrans is aware of the problem and it will be addressed.
Actually, Caltrans did it.
Oh, they already did it. Already done. Oh, even better. Look at that.
No, they're the
No,
ones
it's
that
not
put it in.
finished.
They put it in.
Caltrans put it
I was told someone drew. Okay. Are you sure?
We
Yeah,
have
we saw.
heard, we have not had it confirmed by Caltrans. All the
Okay.
Caltrans people said they don't know about it, but they did put up the warning signs.
Uh-huh.
And people saw Caltrans
That's
trucks.
not right.
Okay, well, that was correct as of our last meeting, and all the meeting information that went to the council.
At this point,
It's on the agenda for this meeting. Okay, but it's up to this point.
okay,
That's what we-
Caltrans did it.
Caltrans did it. I will. You know what? Let me double check on that because I was told that CHP and Caltrans were aware that it was not an approved crosswalk. But if you're telling me it was a Caltrans approved crosswalk, yes.
If you want to stay for our second agenda item, there'll be more discussion on that.
Okay.
We can't really go into it now. but-
We would love to have you stay because we probably
Absolutely.
have questions
I'm here.
for you guys too.
Okay, and that's the only thing I have, unless any other questions from the council or the public.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
I heard rumors that there was a lady that kind of fell crossing the road. Is there any knowledge from CHP?
A little bit more specific as far as the date.
In Moss Beach.
Moss Beach.
The date. I don't have the specific date, but it was very close to the time that the crosswalk was put in.
Okay.
Actually, you know, we're gonna get into all of this in the second agenda
Well,
item.
did we get an
We're going to
update?
bring it up under the agenda item. That's probably the better place to talk about it.
Because we can talk at more length about it when
Just
we,
looking for confirmation.
yeah, well, we'll get into that.
Anything else? Okay.
I'm not cutting you off, I'm just saying we need to do it in a forum where we can all discuss it, which would be the agenda item. Because we can't talk about those things now,
We're gonna ask questions. Always ask questions.
I know. Okay, other public, Chris with the dog committee.
Yes, so this is the San Mateo County Dog Pilot Work Group. You can remember all that. So I've got some good news on many levels. A couple months ago, we recommended and was approved a on-leash dog pilot program in 2 different parks in San Mateo County Park System, Junipero Serra Park and Coyote Point. We had a report at our meeting on Monday from County Parks Director Peggy Jensen that she has sent a memorandum to the Board of Supervisors saying that in both situations it's going well. There's no incidents, especially at Coyote Point. There was concern. There's a zoo there called Curiosity. They have some exotic animals, and there was concern that people walking their dogs would interfere with that. County Parks did a great job, put up some fencing and some signs. They've had no problems there, and a great reduction in the amount of contacts in terms of people, being told they're in an inappropriate place with their dogs, because now the trails there are open to on-leash dog walking. So then now the work group is working on identifying and establishing a set of rules for an off-leash pilot program. It could be more than one site, and so on Monday we reviewed several sites. The committee had 11 sites to choose from. They took a survey, and then from the results of that survey of the committee members, those sites were ranked in order of what people on the committee would like to see and discuss. The top 3 were Quarry Park, Pillar Point Bluffs, and Marata Surf. So then the county worked up some proposals for the top 2, Quarry, Pillar Point, Bluffs. There, if I could just get 2 more minutes to go through it, it'll be quick. The proposals for the quarry were, one, this was for the committee to deliberate on, a small fenced-in dog park. I think it's 120 by 60. Yeah, 120 by 60, right there by the playground, and that would have been fenced off. It could be expanded larger. They would need to cut some of the embankment there and use that to fill it out and level it out. So that they had that idea. That was roundly opposed. I think nobody liked that idea. So then their other option that they presented for Quarry Park was opening up all of the multi-use trails to off-leash use. And so those are most of the trails that you think, the wide kind of fire roads and stuff. There's a few hiking-only trails in Quarry Park, and those would not be available to dogs. And the committee had consensus on that. So we do have consensus on Quarry Park off-leash for multi-use trails. But we have not made that recommendation to the Parks Department yet because we're still debating Pillar Point Bluffs. Now, the discussion with Pillar Point Bluffs was Gene Lauer Trail only, and that's the main trail that kind of, if you park in the Mavericks parking lot and you walk up the asphalt kind of road, and then it branches into various trails. It's the one that they've kind of made into a big, wide, graded trail, road, basically. That's the Gene Lauer. So they proposed that. There was a counter proposal that it be all of the trails on the bluff top and the beach completely off limits to dogs, on leash, off leash, not a paw on the sand, from Ross's Cove all the way up to Valimar Bluffs. That was debated by the committee, and we split on that 7-3. We need to have a full unanimous consensus, so we're going to discuss it at the next meeting. The objections were that it would be difficult to manage, but the county is going to come back with some ideas on how we can get through that. And I just want to say to the committee that this idea of the bluffs and the beach, it will help protect the beach. That's kind of the idea of that is bluffs are off leash, no dogs allowed on the beach at all the way up through the main part of the Fitzgerald Marine Reserve, and that will be a way to help protect that marine wildlife even more, because people are going down on the beach right now with dogs, and there has been an incident, and if we could stop that but still allow people off leash. So that is ongoing. Hopefully we will resolve that at the next meeting next month, and then we'll make our recommendation for probably 2 off-leash sites, and probably these 2 that I just mentioned, because they were the top 2 vote getters. Any questions?
Is there a reason why in Quarry Park, the area used to be referred to as the Wicklow property wasn't considered for off-leash?
Ellie, check me on this. I believe the area that is considered the Wicklow, is that when you go in and that's that area off to the left?
To the left.
Yeah.
There's 2 different parts of it on either side of the road.
Considered for an enclosed off-leash area? That's a good question, Len. Nobody on the committee got a chance to ask that question. It seemed, county came with a proposal. It's kind of like here when we have a letter and people, you want comments on the letter. County came with their proposals and they really wanted comments focused on what they had proposed. And so no, we didn't actually get a chance. We could bring it up, I will try to remember to bring it up at the next meeting, because that seems like a logical place, especially since when we did Quarry Park master plan meetings, people had been saying we don't want dogs right next to the kids. So I don't think there was a single vote for the enclosed dog park in its location when we took a vote of the committee. So that isn't gonna, that's not gonna happen, yeah. Other questions from the council or public?
It sounds as though you're making some progress with making more realistic plans.
Yes and yes. I had been feeling very pessimistic about where it was going in the late spring. But now we're at the point where we're really discussing specific sites. And I'm very pleased that I was dubious of the county's interest in this. The county organized the survey, brought the results, and brought proposals based on what came out of the survey. It's a legitimate, credible process. And in my opinion, it's reflecting what the committee wants and what the committee members have heard from public comment. So that's how you want to, in my opinion, that's how you want a public process to go. And I'm now feeling very optimistic that there's going to be off-leash pilot places. There are probably going to be 2 here on the coast, and they're good spots. And we will have consensus on the committee, which is important. Committee's made up of equestrian representative, mountain bike representative, dog community representative, naturalist representative, county parks representatives. So there's a wide variety of stakeholders in this committee, and to get consensus, I mean, that's a positive product. So. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thanks, Chris.
Are there other government reports? You're here mostly with the agenda item?
No, this is for something else.
Oh, okay. Okay. Okay, go on. Chris Porter?
Yes, I'm changing hats.
Okay.
I'm Chris Porter, and I am on a group in Pacifica assigned by the city manager, and it's called Unhoused in Pacifica. And what we're attempting to do is locate shelter or safe parking for all the RVs that are parked on the streets. And I know that the homeless is a big problem right now in El Granada because Recology was involved in a breaking down of an encampment. We've had 3 in Pacifica. So what I'm doing is I'm reaching out to as many different people as I can. We need space, and what the big picture is to try to find a shelter on the coast side. There's no shelter on the coast side whatsoever. There's one in East Palo Alto. So right now, the immediate concern in Pacifica is to find safe housing for the RVs. But I would like to come before the board again as we get further along in our process and let you know what we're finding out and get ideas from you, and just really think about open space where we can build this shelter with help from both the county and the state and even federal funds. So, thank you.
Chris, when you get to the point of wanting to present that to the council, just contact us and we'll talk about doing that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We're open to public comment unless there's more government representatives.
I don't know, I put in a comment speech, but I guess I'm here. Barbara Dye, Vice President of the Granada Community Services District. And at this point, I just wanted to talk about the fact that we have just sent a survey to all of our ratepayers in El Granada, Miramar, Clipper Ridge, and Princeton, all the people covered by our Parks District authorities, to ask them what, yes, thank you. Ask them what they would like to see in the future Burnham Park. As you know, that process is about to really heat up. We're going to have an event on October 24th at El Granada Elementary School, where we're going to have some really hands-on what will fit in that park. The survey also talks about the potential community center and what kind of recreation programs people would like. And you may remember that this past 2 years, we've done recreation programs in the summer that have been really mostly quite successful, and we want to make sure that we tailor them to what people would like to have and what will make sense for us to do. So I'm encouraging everyone who's in the community to look for their survey in the mail. It should have come yesterday, and please respond. If you get a survey, there's also a link on the top that allows you to answer it online. It's not on the website because our goal is not to have a lot of, unlimited voting by people. So if you get one in your house, you get a survey, you can answer it online or you can answer the paper copy. So please tell the community to let us know what you want. Thank you.
Thank you. I presume that's limited to the GCSD customers?
Yes.
Yeah.
What was the date of the meeting at the El Granada School?
The 24th, October 24th.
Thursday evening?
I think it's a Tuesday. Tuesday, yes. And it's going to start at 5 with pizza, and go,
October 24th?
yeah,
Thursday. Okay, so anyway,
yes. 5 o'clock, going to start with pizza, and then we're going to break into groups, and we're going to have the results of the survey at that point, but we really just, it's going to be a hands-on workshop where people can They're going to have a big map of the property, and it'll give people a chance to really think about what makes sense on that property, you know? How the various, whatever uses people want would fit together. It's not an enormous property, it's about 5 acres of park space, you know? How are we going to use that property? So that's the goal of that workshop. And then all of that information will go to the board, and we are hoping that early in 2020, we will be closing in on some final designs for the property and start thinking about moving forward with putting a park there and making the front yard of El Granada be a welcoming place for people to come.
And when is the survey due?
It's due, I think, September 27th. So it's, you have the rest of this month to turn it in. So we want to hear from everyone. Thank
Any
you.
other questions for Barbara? Thank you. I think we're sort of morphing into public comment, which is fine. I have one public comment slip from Graham.
Good evening. I'm Graham Wood. I live in El Granada, up in that part of El Granada. As we were told by Ellie, yes, we know that the Quarry Park work, fuel reduction has started. I'm actually here representing about, so far, 21 households in that area of El Granada Boulevard. When the maps first went up for the work that was going to be done, a number of us contacted the addresses that were given, which was both CAL FIRE and the county arborist, asking about whether the fire breaks behind El Granada Boulevard were going to be completed. Lots of things around this work talk about there already being a fire break. Well, it's not a complete fire break, which is a very high risk. Now, seeing as we don't have a way out other than this one road until you get to this road, we regard ourselves as being at a very high risk in that. And it appears that there is no work planned for the back of the properties on El Granada Boulevard, although it appeared in the map. So a number of us have put together a letter that we sent off on, an email that we sent off on Monday, both to CAL FIRE and to the county, asking that they actually do something about this rather than, I mean, we understand that any fuel reduction is a good thing, but it seems like basically what's happening at present is they're improving trails. And there's actually lives at stake here. You know, it seems like it should be a priority of the money that the state has given to help preserve lives and property. And it seems to us like that is not what's happening at present. And I think that's probably my 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so if there's any recommendations as to how, as I say, we haven't heard back from either CAL FIRE or the county from the email that went out first thing Monday morning on this.
Did you send the council an email?
Sorry?
Did you send the council an
No,
email?
no, I didn't know. Is that the right protocol? That
I just
copy that I can forward the email to the council.
I just wondering.
Yeah.
Could you also forward it to me as Supervisor Wilson's representative?
Right. Yes, we. As I say, we. Yes. Yeah. Okay. We'll do that. Thank you.
I'm happy to look into it.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Clarification question?
Yeah.
The fire break you referred to, that you said wasn't complete, was that from the previous work that Post did on that?
Right. So there's two previous pieces of work. There was the work that Post did, which goes kind of at the back of Dolphin and the very top of the 500 block of El Granada Boulevard, which is pretty broad. That was done about 10 years ago. About 5 years ago, when the county owned the property, they came up from lower down, and there is a bridge across the fire break which is only 3 or 4 houses wide, but that means it's an incomplete fire break. And as soon as, you know, there's a fire comes through there, there is no way out. I mean, the only other ways out from the top of El Granada Boulevard there are 3 locked gates, one on Dolphin and 2 at the top of El Granada Boulevard. We have no other access. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? We'll move on to announcements. Barbara, do you have any announcements?
The only announcements I have are we got the bill for the PO box for the year, so we wrote a check to pay that. And I missed the last CERQ meeting as I was sick, but the meeting prior to that, they announced, a representative from the county announced that at Tanitas Creek, they're going to be getting state-of-the-art tsunami signs for when that beach opens, and it'll be directing people straight across the street from the beach. And these signs cost about $2,000 a piece, and they have no plans to add them anywhere else on the coast, just down there.
What makes them so special?
They light up and they point, I guess they have beacons or something pointing to where you go. That's it.
Dave, any announcements? Lynn?
Oh, actually, I do have one very brief one. A couple of constituents had contacted me about a trench being dug down below Moss Beach Distillery where the house burned 18 months ago. It turns out that there's yet another permit granting authority in the county that none of us knew about, which is the Groundwater Protection Group. And so this contractor had gotten a permit from them. They're looking at something to do with groundwater right next to where the house burned. So just thought I would mention that there's yet another permitting authority.
Michelle, you?
No, nothing.
Tomorrow? Dan, any announcements? We'll move on to the consent agenda. We have one item on the consent agenda, which is approving the minutes for the last meeting of August 28th. Do I have a motion to approve those?
I'll make a motion, we approve the minutes of the last meeting.
Second?
Second.
All in favor of approving the minutes?
Right.
Unanimous, approved. Okay, so we can move on to the regular agenda. 4 items. The first item is entitled Consideration of a Letter to Granada Community Service District and Montero Water and Sanitation District regarding pickup of compostable organic material. That's my wording. I think you may have a different wording, but this is sponsored by Barbara and Tamar. So I'll let you go ahead with your presentation.
Okay, all right, thank you. This started with Tamar moving down here and getting on the council and wanting to find out why we didn't have the same kind of composting program that Pacifica and Half Moon Bay have. So we started kind of digging around, asked some questions, and it seemed that the community had voted or surveyed that years ago that we did not want composting. We didn't want to pay the extra. I believe at the time it was $1.46. And so we continued to look into it. We did a survey on next door. And at the same time, I got chosen to be on the CCAG ad hoc committee for updating the countywide integrated waste management program. And came to find out that the landfill that we have here at Ox Mountain is only got a lifespan left of about 19 years. And so with our survey, we found out that people, it's not overwhelmingly wanting composting here, but people do seem to want it. So we thought we would put out to the community to see how they feel about it, and then go to the agencies that oversee the composting and see if they would reopen their discussion about it. So.
Yeah, so thanks, Barbara, for kind of summarizing where this all started. So we just prepared a few slides just as an overview of some of the highlights of, you know, a little bit of background about composting and why it may or may not be a good fit for where we are. So nothing really shocking or earth-shattering, but just again to kind of hone in on some of the main points. So probably all very familiar with the idea of composting, what it is, and why it's a good thing to do. As Barbara just mentioned, the Ox Mountain landfill is maybe gives us a little bit more of a emphasis on why we might want to be thinking about that or things like that in this area. If you want to. And so nearby, what we're aware of, there is composting service in Pacifica. Seems to work well. Half Moon Bay has composting services. However, we're in a stretch where that service is not available to everyone, so there people do participate in residential or individual composting, but as a community, it's not something we have access to. And so, looking around to try to figure out where the interest is, we do have some community support. Right now, the survey that we put out on Nextdoor has 290 votes, 57% in favor, 43% not opposed. So it's a little bit updated from when these slides were presented, but clearly it's at least worth discussing because there is some feeling in both directions. And a lot of this, kind of background, people probably familiar with some of the reasons for, well, all the great things about composting. Your bins will be freed up, your garbage bin will be largely freed up if you do compost. That's one option. Some reasons against it, issues with recology, increased fees, definitely something to be discussed, and then some people are already doing it on their own, so they don't want to incur another thing to have to, fill up a bin. So those are just some of the conversations that we picked up on through the survey. Barbara, you want to jump in?
Oh, sure. Okay.
What slides?
Food, we do have the new disposable wares ordinance that was presented here a few months ago. Let me go ahead and change it. The city and county of San Francisco has had a great success with their food composting, and other areas have followed. California does require businesses to recycle organic waste. Minimizing food waste is part of California's effort to address climate change by reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Backyard composting may not be feasible for all because it's expensive and time-consuming. It increases pets, and some people just don't want to do it. Residential food composting is in line with the state's goal of landfill diversion. And it's interesting that right now, one of the things I learned on this committee was that San Mateo County citizens, or San Mateo County averages 2,200 pounds per cubic yard at the landfill. The national average is 1,200 pounds. So we are a lot more, we're contributing to the landfill a lot more than most other states and counties. California Legislative Search returned 26 bills that reference composting. And like we said, Ox Mountain landfill will reach capacity in about 19 years. And again, we contribute twice as much. And it also will take 15 to 20 years just to identify, permit, and license a new landfill location. So Ox Mountain is the only landfill in San Mateo County. So we think it's the right thing to do for further generations and just the right thing to do. We have drafted a memo to MWSD and GCSD requesting that they reopen their talks with Recology and Republic about possibly looking at composting. And we'd like to work with them to review the option to add food composting to the next Recology contract. In order for us to have composting, food composting, we need to have green waste pickup every week instead of every 2 weeks. And we have Gordon Tong here, who's from the Office of Sustainability, to give us brief rundown on composting.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Barbara. So my name is Gordon Tong. I'm with the county's Office of Sustainability, and I work on our waste reduction programs. So I'm here to kind of give a county's perspective on composting. I have a couple of slides here just to talk about our perspective. To save you all some time, we support it. We think it's a great measure. It's for all the reasons that were outlined previously by Tamara and Barbara, but I can go into a little bit more detail here. So for the county, the goal is to become an environmentally conscious community. So it addresses these three main points, which is, one, we want to reduce the amount of waste that's being generated and increase the amount of waste that's diverted just to conserve the natural resources in our county. That's one of the county's goals. Second, the county wants to preserve the existing landfill at Ox Mountain as much as possible. Barbara mentioned that there's 19 years of capacity left. It kind of shifts around depending on the economy and how much waste is generated, but we really want to eliminate the need to build a new landfill. Nobody wants to build a new landfill in the county, and we certainly don't want to send our waste out of county to truck it hundreds and hundreds of miles away. So that's kind of what's preempting that and motivating that. And then lastly, there's a lot of concern around greenhouse gas emissions and mitigating climate change. Organic waste or food waste is a main contributor of methane. If you put it in a landfill, it generates methane gas, and that's actually 20 times more potent than carbon dioxide when it contributes to greenhouse gas emissions. So by reducing composting, it will save up a lot on greenhouse gas emissions. So just a kind of a highlight of the different haulers in the county. So pretty much every single franchise hauler in the county offers curbside composting. So if the Midcoast decides to do that, you guys will be in very good company. And the next slide. Okay. So some legislation that's coming down the pipeline, state legislation, will require some composting anyway. Starting 2019, businesses are to compost their waste if they generate over 4 cubic yards of waste. And in 2022, that will extend to residents as well. They'll be required to do composting, and it will fall to the county to do that monitoring. It was mentioned previously about the disposable food serviceware ordinance, so we are trying to get this going. And if it goes into effect, then it will promote and require the use of compostable food serviceware rather than plastic. And it would be really helpful if there was a place to put it in the compost bin rather than the trash bin if this does go into effect. So it's kind of in alignment with this ordinance as well. And then I mentioned the climate action plan, the climate action goals. The county does have a climate action plan, and waste is part of the greenhouse gas emissions. So switching to composting or having composting service will help reach our goals to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from the unincorporated county areas. And finally, I just want to end by saying that we're promoting some of the other resources we have, regardless of whether the community decides to go forward with this curbside composting or not. I want to highlight that we have a hotline that people can call to ask questions about recycling. This is for all county residents. We'll help you recycle, reuse almost anything. And then for those of you who might want to compost at home, we offer services for that. We have heavily discounted backyard bins, so they're normally about $80 or so. But with our discount, you can get it for about $20, $30 if you're a county resident. If you want to build your own bins, we can give a rebate up to $100 if you build your own bin, and we'll pay for some of the materials for that. And that includes worm bins as well, if you guys want to do things indoors or play with worms a little bit. And that's it. It's trying to be short and sweet. We support that idea of having composting. We do realize that it is up to the community services districts and the sanitary districts. But from our angle, we think it's a great idea, and it helps promote a lot of the county's goals. And I'm happy to take any questions as well.
Ian?
You mentioned the composting worm bins. Is that, how does that work? Do you have, is that discounted prices, and what are they, or?
Right. Yes, so the worm bins are priced pretty much similar to the backyard bins.
Similar, okay.
Right, so you can, I think they retail around $80 or so for the whole bin. You can get them from our website, which is discounted for about $20 or $30, and we'll also provide with a free starter pound of red worms for you to. Yep.
Mark, any questions?
Do you know what percentage of the community is doing residential compost?
You mean countywide?
I guess, yeah.
So pretty much every franchised hauler, so all the cities.
And then like the backyard.
Oh, the backyard.
Yeah.
Oh, that we don't know. It's harder to track, but we give away maybe about 20 bins a month.
Oh, wow.
So it's kind of fluctuates when we do workshops. Oh, I also want to mention that we have workshops on how to compost at home. It can be a bit daunting to get started, but our workshops are free. They'll teach you how to do both worm composting or backyard composting. And the kicker is at the end, if you complete the workshop, we'll give you a free bin.
Michelle?
I have two short questions. You mentioned the state bills that had, what's the status of those bills? Have those already been passed and are scheduled to go into effect in 2019, I think 2020 or 2022?
Right, so the AB 1826 has passed already, and its threshold, which is 4 cubic yards of waste being generated by business, that takes effect this year. We're working with businesses throughout the county to help them inform them about the law and providing resources for them to help them get started. The other one, 1383, has passed, but it's in the rulemaking stage, so the final regulations about how exactly the state's going to enforce that hasn't been finalized yet, but it's slated to take effect 2022.
And my other question is about the single-use compostable food plates and utensils and stuff. I've heard that those are difficult to compost in like home composting bins, or that they take longer to break down. Is that true? Or are there certain things that could only be composted in a community-wide compost facility?
Right, so there are a couple of versions of what are called compostable serviceware. Two main ones are the ones that are made of plastic, but they're made of compostable plastic. So it's kind of plastic that's made from corn, but it's designed to break down in an industrial facility. So that's those giant windrows that you see that do the composting for the municipal operations. Those are harder to compost. They won't break down in a home composting pile. It just doesn't get hot enough. The other version are the fiber-based, the paper ones that feel like paper, that aren't plastic. That's what we're trying to move towards. Those actually will compost readily in both an industrial facility and also in a backyard bin. You might have to be a little bit more patient with that, but it's made out of paper, so it's easier to compost. But there is two versions. One is harder to do than the other, but both should be compostable in the facility. The paper one we're trying to move towards should be compostable even in a home composting pile.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So our letter or memo is that we propose to send to both the Montero Water and Sanitary District and the Granada Community Service District is the Midcoast Community Council has always taken an interest in ever-changing needs of our community. In recent months, we've had several inquiries as to why we do not participate in the disposal of compostable food waste and materials. It appears there's a shift in the community opinion since the vote or survey taken years ago on green waste collection. Polls and comments on Nextdoor, as well as inquiries to the MCC, seem to show a new interest in this service that our neighbors in Pacifica and Half Moon Bay currently have. The Midcoast is one of the very few communities in this county that does not get weekly green waste pickup, which is required to participate in the disposal of food waste. Projections show Ox Mountain landfill will be at capacity in 19 years if we keep up at the pace we are now. Co-siders do a stellar job recycling, so we are confident we can do the same with our green waste, reducing our garbage. We are asking the MWSD and GCSD to reconsider the discussion with the community on the subject of green waste pickups.
Thank you. Shall we go ahead and make a motion to approve the letter so we can discuss it?
Aren't you gonna have baker slips before you?
No. First of all, we want to make a motion to approve the letter. We're not approving the letter. We're making a motion to approve the letter so we can discuss it.
I'll move to approve the letter.
Second?
Okay, so now we discuss the letter. First, are there any technical questions from the council regarding the letter? Any clarification?
The only clarification I want to make is that this was, being that there's two agencies that handle this, we want to discuss it, we wanted to discuss it with the community, see how the community felt about it before we took it to both the different sanitation districts. We had attempted, we brought it up at a water meeting, and I believe Chris Porter, who's here from Ecology, had discussed possibly a community composting like they have up at Fairlawn View, and there just doesn't seem to be any room for that. And the Montera seemed to say the community didn't want it. So we thought we discussed with the community before we did any formal requests from them.
Okay. Maybe we could turn the light on back there so that when people talk, we can see them. Dan, you had a question to clarify?
Yeah. Apologize, this may be an elementary question, but, so it's currently picked up every other week. So it's organic material that eventually breaks down anyway. So please explain to me the significance of the every week versus every 2 weeks pickup in order to participate.
Well, it's a state law. It's a state law that it has to be picked up weekly if you have garbage other than your leaves and branches and.
Oh, okay, so
It's
green
food.
green
Food
waste
needs to
versus
be-
food waste.
Mhm.
Okay, that's it, okay.
We do have a number of speaker slips on this. Please, if you want to talk, do get me one. We have a lot of people to talk. We are going to be very strict with the 3-minute limit. First one I have is from Justine Cable.
Okay. I'm Justine Cable, and I was an active participant in the Nextdoor survey. I was pleased to see that pop up. My husband and I recently moved to Montera and found that there wasn't composting available. And I'm going to reshare some facts that I posted on that conversation online, so I apologize for any redundancy. So every year, U.S. landfills and trash incinerators receive 167 million tons of garbage, and every bag contributes to pollution, to the soil, air, and water. 50% of that typical municipal garbage that's set out on your curb, it's compostable. But only 21% of that is actually food scraps. And the other 29% is non-food scrap compostable waste that you typically can't compost in your backyard. So by making one addition to our service, the coastside communities have an opportunity to divert 50% of the compostable waste that's currently filling our landfills. And remember, those that are currently composting at home are possibly only composting 21% of that 50% of compostable items that are filling their trash cans. And I don't know, I don't do home composting, and I don't know anybody else that composts their paper towels at home right now. But it's great to know that part of the community is able to do some of it at home, but by denying composting service to a huge part of our community that may not currently have the means or the time to compost. So I'm talking about people that work full-time, overtime, have families to raise, live in apartments, condos, or have landlords that don't allow yard composting, or restaurant workers that have to throw away food every day that could have been composted. So this change is bigger than minor individual inconveniences. This is about helping the environment and doing it as soon as possible. And we can affect real change for the amount of a cost of a cup of coffee at your favorite coffee house. And that helps the environment with just one small adjustment to our service. Thank you.
Thank you. Adrian?
Hi, I'm Adrian Cable. So me and my wife Justine, we moved to Montara about 2 months ago from San Francisco. And San Francisco is an amazing, wonderful city which is filthy and polluted, and coming to Montara with beautiful, fresh, clean air made us really be aware of what we owe back to the community in terms of being responsible for the environment. And people have talked today about the impact of sending material to landfill in the quantities that we do. And I think we all have a civic duty to reduce that as far as possible. And for all of you that compost in your backyard, it's commendable. Everyone should do that if they can. But we don't have control over many of the materials that we choose to discard. Many of us who get take-out meals or items in compostable food packaging can't choose today paper-based materials over corn-based materials, and so today those have to go into landfill. So we're not advocating that people that want to compost in their backyard stop doing that. What we are advocating is that for a couple of dollars a month, it's a small price to pay to extend that benefit to everybody who's not able to compost at all residentially, and for those that are, enable them to reduce their landfill burden by adding further materials to their compost every week. So, I'm a strong supporter of composting in all its forms, and I'd encourage everybody in the community to support it as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Adrian. Bill Kehoe?
I was hoping to speak after I hear from the two, Chris and from MWSD, see what they say first.
Okay, I think you guys are speaking as public comment in this regard. Can I get speaker slips?
I would like to be last so I can address all the comments of everybody of this.
You all want to be last? What?
I'm happy to go.
I've got a speaker slip in there if everybody else is passing them.
Since we're short on time, I will just start speaking.
Okay.
First, happy Palindrome Week. This is the week in which tonight we are at 911, one night. It will be that way for the rest of the week.
Catherine, everybody knows who you are, but could you, for the record?
Catherine Slater-Carter, and I'm here representing Montero Water and Sanitary District. We would be happy to work with folks on this, but having been involved in recycling and composting for many decades, I find a lot of questions are left wide open. For instance, the comment on other states versus California. How do you know what they have in their waste as opposed to what we do? I have family in other states, and so I know what I pay attention to that kind of thing, and I think that some of your data may not be equivalent. How many years does the landfill have if the Midcoast starts composting? I would believe we're a very small part of it. And so adding this additional cost to many people who are retirees in Montero, they bought houses when they were $20,000, $30,000, $50,000, and they are living on Social Security right now. So I have asked them, and I was told it's a problem for them. Extra money is a problem for them. The part about gases, compost gives off gases too. So what's the difference in off-gassing between composting and doing it in your backyard or just putting it in the dump? The dump actually is sealed, so there's less gas coming off in the dump because it is actually sealed so that things don't biodegrade. That's been the way it's been for a very, very long time. What happens if there aren't enough people who want to use a volume of compost? How does that work? Years ago and now with the Chinese market, we have more recyclables taking up space and storage space because the Chinese are not buying our recyclables, and we actually would be doing better and more efficient if we could find a way to create markets for recyclables, but they're not there. Are there going to be, what about compost markets? And let me see, what about garbage disposals? That would take care of a whole lot of stuff, and it's real simple. You run the stuff down the garbage disposal, pretty much everything except bones. Granted, you can't do paper napkins or paper plates, but how many of us have paper plates every day? I mean, really. And so you run those down, and it gets ground up, mixed with water, gets processed. The little bugs, the little biofarms at the sewer plant digest it,
Catherine, can you?
and it
Yep, wrap it
gets
up?
I'm
pressed.
interested in what she's saying.
I am too,
So,
but
I'm sorry, I'm done, thank you.
can we ask you questions later if you
Sure.
stick around? Okay.
I have a slip in. Can I speak next as GCSD
You
person?
can, yes.
Thank you. At GCSD, this is something we're also interested in. It's been on our list of things to go on a future agenda for the last few months. It would be nice to be collaborating with you on this. I didn't know about this meeting. I guess I missed the next door stuff, but thank goodness Catherine called me and let me know about this meeting tonight and that you were sending us a letter. It's definitely something we're willing to look at. Our cost to our residents to raise to the rate Pacifica pays would be about a 45% increase for our residents, and to go to the amount that Half Moon Bay pays would be a 66% increase for our residents. Doesn't mean we shouldn't do it, but it does mean we need to take some time to think about it. So it's on our agenda. I mean, go ahead and send us your memo. We're happy that you're interested in it as well, but I would really like to be collaborating with you on this matter.
Thanks. Chris, you're from Ecology, is that correct? Did you want to speak along with this group?
Can I be last?
Everybody can't be last. But
You can go back to your regular order. I just thought, since I represent the people who collect, it'd be good to sort of hear that perspective before I talk.
So you ready, Bill?
Yeah, I
Okay.
can go down. I'm sorry to confuse that, but I just thought. Pushing me over?
Excuse me. Bill Keogh, Moss Beach. So Catherine touched on a few things I was going to talk about. Having followed this closely when it came up to MWSD a while back, probably 3-4 years ago, a lot of people turned out because the way it works is they have to notify everybody ahead of time that there's going to be rate changes. And so you get a little notice with your bill. So people that are actually paying for it knew about it. And that's one of my pet peeves with this. A lot of us don't go on next door. And it's not that because I'm old and I'm not familiar with computers. I've been dealing with computers for 35 years, so I've been on the internet for over 15. I just don't like next door because it's a bunch of people with opinions and not a whole lot of facts. When I read through this, so I blew off the survey right away because it was biased and self-serving, and I also did statistics for years, so I could see how you can shift these numbers around to support your cause. And so I get really sort of upset when I see people trying to say, oh, 56% of 195 are for it. Well, Catherine or Ms. Porter, I just started. Chris, thank you, Chris, that's all right. Could tell you how many ratepayers are out here, and you'll see that that's actually a small fraction of them. The other thing I had a problem with is that it's kind of all glossed together like we're going to save all this. And I don't see any real data there that says what percentage of compostable food waste is actually filling up Ox Mountain compared to all the other garbage that's going down there from all the different communities, not just in San Mateo County, but around the Bay. That's used for a lot of different communities there. And then the other thing on the right about is the cost involved in this. I have had a compost container from Smith & Hawkins for going back 25 to 30 years on my property, and have done that religiously, along with recycling even before we got the big blue recycling waste. I have been very attuned to environments and making sure there's space left for my kids back when they were younger, and now they're older, but it's like I don't want to see what's going on there. But at the same token, I don't want people coming in and saying, you have to do this, and now, basically my only income now is Social Security and my life savings. I don't want to start throwing money there. I'm not the type of person that runs out to Starbucks and buys a $5 coffee and throws the cup out. I brew my own coffee. I use a reusable cup that I use every single day. In fact, I'm using the same one now for 30 years. I don't do garbage a lot. I'm very picky about that. And I can see in my neighbors, half the time they don't use even the green waste barrel or the recycling barrel. Or if they do, it's from 75 boxes of Amazon because everything's delivered. They never go to a store. So I see a lot of kind of misleading facts and information here, and I think they have to follow the proper channel. This has to go to both of the sanitary boards. Yeah, I'm wrapping
Okay,
up.
you're wrapping up.
And go to the sanitary boards so that the people that are actually gonna be paying the bills are fairly noticed and have a chance to speak to it. I wouldn't have known about this except somebody gave me a call. I mean, no offense, but I don't read the agendas every 2 weeks anymore like I used to. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Jordan?
I have just one thing very quick. I just want to say we also have to, I know, but
Go ahead.
we also have to deal with the recycling crisis, because we have a lot of issues now about what's happening with the recycling, and recycling is no longer free. It used to get paid for by the materials because people bought them. That doesn't happen anymore. It's really a problem, and we're all going to have to face that as well. So we got a lot of issues to deal with. Let's try to work together on them.
Yeah, I'm giving a little bit extra leeway to the people that actually run the agencies. Jordan, that's you.
Okay. Yes, I'm Jordan, this is Dylan. We are here in support of composting. My experience is just anecdotal. I came from San Mateo, loved the green waste bin, composting, used to pick up compost, commercial compost for my yard, because I don't compost at home. I would love to, but it's just one of those things that doesn't get done. We have 5 adults and a baby in our household, and what we do now, because we can't put compost in there, is we actually drive it to Millbrae, to my mother-in-law's house, throw it out there, because I feel horrible about throwing that much. So we actually have just a small bin for 6 people because we drive our compost to Millbrae. But that seems kind of ridiculous, and we don't make a separate trip of it, so we're not wasting gas on it. We do it when we go there, but the fact that we have to do it, we buy compostable diapers because we don't want to put those in the landfill because we know how bad they are, and we would just love the opportunity to be able to do it. One thing that I noticed previously when it was discussed, and I tried to provide the information on Nextdoor, but I don't think people understood previously, part of the thing against it was older people didn't want to switch to the big green waste bin. That was one of the things that people are like, they didn't want the big bin. What they didn't understand is no matter what, they were getting the big bin. They wanted to keep their own bins. And I was trying to explain that no matter what, we get the big ones. So I think that was part of the pushback the last time.
Thank you. Sid?
I'm the only one waiting for my name to be called. Okay, I wanted to just address some of the misinformation that was in that slide presentation. And were you the one that was from the county? Yes. Okay. I took the free, at the time, I don't know if it's still free, through the Office of Sustainability Master Composter class. And they also ask us to go out in the community and give workshops. So there's really no excuse for people to not do backyard composting. And one of the things I learned in the class is that that's your opportunity to return your own waste and garbage, not meat products, which nobody mentioned here. You can't put meat in the compost bin. But then you do not have to go down to Ace Hardware or Home Depot and buy a chemical thing to fertilize your garden. You can return all of your nutrients to your own soil, and that is free. It doesn't cost any money. In your slide, it said that composting was expensive. Well, I really beg to differ. So if people are driving it to Millbrae, why don't you just adopt a backyard composter here on the coast, because there's plenty of us. And if anybody's not aware, Pacifica Gardens on Rosita Road, at 830 Rosita Road, they have a whole class. You could go there and learn how to do composting and recycling all your garden materials as well as your food waste, but except meat. And one of the things that I object to, and I'm a senior citizen on a fixed income too, but if Montero Water and Sanitary District, which is my district, were to put it up to the district to be voted on by the constituents, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, you need 70% of the people to say no in order for it to fail, or they have to respond in writing. They can't even send Clemens an email on rate increases.
Yeah, that's the 218 notice for rate increases.
So what is the percent?
50% plus 1.
Okay, so usually they don't get that percentage. So even though it sounds like a glorious idea, they don't get enough people. Enough people don't
actually send in their written objection to having the fees raised. And that happened when we got those ginormous green waste bins. I hardly ever use mine, but I have 2 goats. And my whole entire neighborhood in Seal Cove comes over and brings their salad trimmings and everything and just throw it over the fence, and my goats are completely happy for it. So anybody else who's, you know, whining because there is no green waste pickup curbside, you can bring it and give my goats some food. But I think it really comes down to no meat. They're vegetarians or herbivores, shall I say. It really comes down to education and awareness, and I think both districts that aren't participating in green waste collection right now, food waste collection right now could, you know, ask the Office of Sustainability to come out to the coast, have a master composter, give the demonstrations,
Chris,
and then you can also get some of those bins at a discount through the Office of Sustainability. So I think that the main objection I have is that by adding food composting to the Recology contract, it causes seniors, students, lower income people to be burdened with an extra fee. And although it's a nice thing, it's not free. I mean, it costs money, whereas it's free to backyard compost. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And it goes to employee compensation. Part of that fee goes to their salaries of the people that come to collect.
Okay, so I'd like to get a statement from Chris, and then we'll turn it back to the council. If the 3 people who represent agencies involved in this could stick around as resources for us as we talk about it, that would be very helpful. Chris?
Can I ask a question, if I may, very briefly? Very quick. So, what do you recommend for people that aren't...
Oh, no, we really don't.
Later.
Okay.
Yeah.
She wants to move on.
Hi, I'm Chris Porter. I'm the General Manager of Recology of the Coast for 36 years. So, first of all, let's start by saying Recology of the Coast never said we would not do composting. It was the choice of the districts. And in Montara, okay, by the people, correct.
The ratepayers.
Right, the ratepayers. There was over 1,000 surveys returned in Montara, which was about 46%. So that is a really good turnout of people that said that they do their own composting, which has enabled us on our yearly state report to have a diversion number against having to do composting curbside, because we have documentation showing people do composting. We also have documentation from the Granada area of self-haul, as far as there's a lot of landscapers in Granada. So we have, looked into different things of how to make sure that we're following the law in the different districts. Okay, as far as the dump site goes, that number changes every 5 minutes. The last time I was told, it is over 25 years for maximum landfill because of the ground cover that they have used. And what they do is they have 3 tiers in the landfill, and they go from one area to another to another. So that's like a changing number. I'm sure if you called BFI, they'd tell you it's 50 years, but the number changes all the time. So again, this program, we could offer it, but it costs money. You would have to have weekly pickup, which means we'd have to have a separate truck, you'd have to have another driver, you'd have to have fuel, and the cost for composting to process composting is 2.5 times the cost of landfill. Okay, because of the continuing attention that it needs. We compost it takes from 90 to 120 days for the composting that Recology does. And again, I'm willing to do whatever the citizens want to do, but it can't be we're going to do composting at this house and the next 2 houses aren't and the next house is. It can't be that, it just gets too complicated. And we would most probably have to get some sort of new cans because everyone got the 96-gallon cart for green waste pickup every other week. So that wouldn't work if we were going to be doing composting. So, just thought, whatever, the decision is made with the two districts, we'll be happy to work with them. As I've always worked with Barbara, as I've always worked with Catherine and the boards, whatever everyone needs, we're there to do it.
Thank you very much. Okay, we've got, no, we're going to need to move on. We've got a really heavy agenda, and we really want to keep this focused. At this point, we have a motion on the floor to approve the letter. We'll go around the council and discuss it. We'll take approximately 3 minutes each and go around until everybody's said what they need to say. And then we'll vote on the letter. And I appreciate the people from the agencies staying here so that we can ask contact questions if we have something we need to ask you. Thank you. Barbara?
Just save time, I don't have anything to add.
Nothing to
Basically, I think we all understand that composting and waste disposal is a larger problem than it was just a few years ago. And so taking on any part of it seems like a good and positive effort to undertake. I'm a little concerned of the sniping back and forth, which I think is unnecessary, just to talk about what's a serious issue. But beyond that, I have no good points.
I'm looking at the gist of the letter and of the presentation, and I think that what we're asking for, what you're asking for, is that this be discussed. And it is being discussed, and it sounds like there's a bigger range of opinions than perhaps we thought. I don't know. But there's a big range of opinions, and I think that we're doing what you're asked for, and hopefully that'll continue.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, for me, this is a really important issue. I think it's something that we should at least talk about with the various agencies and investigate. I'm not exactly certain on when that last survey was done, but I think just people's perception, both locally and more broadly nationwide, has changed over the last few years of how bad it is to put more and more stuff in the landfill. So I do think that we should bring this up. We should get real numbers on how much it's going to cost. Understanding that it will cost a little bit more, perhaps people are more willing to pay that now than they were a few years ago. So I'm completely for this letter. And yeah, I would like further discussion on this topic.
Yeah, I mean, this was really born out of a question of curiosity, kind of the how and the why. And that's kind of what led to this, the survey. And that was the dollar amount that was in the survey was just the things that were floating around that we could get information on at the time. We didn't really have like the hard facts. So that was the estimate that we were given. So that's what we went with. And it really was just a place to kind of gauge interest, gauge ideas, and just get a sense of what people were thinking and feeling because we didn't know. So this is a good place to start the dialogue, and that's really what we were hoping to do today. So I think this helps get that
Dan?
going.
I'm sorry. Dan?
Yeah, apparently I don't have a great understanding of the difference between food waste and green waste. I eat mostly plant-based food. Am I wrong to put a unused tomato in the green waste bin?
It's supposed to be yard waste.
It's grown in the yard.
Yeah, I'd like to understand that.
This is what we should be talking about. What is the difference?
Right.
It's all from the ground.
So food waste and yard waste, or green waste, the distinction really is that green waste is the yard trimmings, the woody stuff, the leaves, things like that. Food waste are things that can be, I think that the technical term is putrescible. It kind of like deteriorates and becomes kind of like a health issue if it decomposes and becomes attracts flies, attracts vectors, things like that. So I think that's why if you take yard waste, it's easier than taking food waste, because if you just have leaves and twigs and things like that in your bin, then that's pretty okay. But then if you start adding in things like meat, tomatoes, things like that.
Everyone knows that.
Well, you're not supposed to backyard compost meat, but you can compost meat in an industrial facility.
So if we don't put meat in the green waste bin, it shouldn't be a problem, everything else is green.
So green waste, sorry, I'm trying to get a handle on the question. So you're not supposed to put, from what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, put food waste into your green waste bin, because if you do, then you start introducing things that can make it susceptible to vectors, for rats. It can compost, or it can kind of like break down, become moldy, all that stuff that lives in your cart. And I believe it's picked up every 2 weeks. So if you have that in your cart for 2 weeks, that can attract wildlife and all these other vectors that the people don't want in their neighborhood. So whereas if you just have it with green waste, you don't really have that problem. Is that clear, or am I understanding?
Okay, let's hear it from Chris.
The answer is because you bring strictly green waste, which is your plant, your trees, your lawn, your branches, to a certain disposal area. If it's contaminated with food, it has to go to a completely different disposal area. That is the main reason. Okay. And you could get
Is the fruit of the
yeah, you
of the
could
plant.
get a complete load rejected at the dump site if you bring it in as green waste and there's food. I mean, we have like a lot of times at the end of the year, apples and pumpkins and things like that we have to watch for when we go.
So we can't put our pumpkins in there?
No.
That's garbage.
So does that
That's-
answer
yeah.
your question?
Or that's in your composting bin.
Well, that would be in my house.
And I will say that Recology sent out a list of what can and cannot go in those composting bins, so we've all received that.
Yes.
So let's go back to talking about the letter, whether we should approve it or not. Let's talk about that as we go around this time. Barbara?
I'd like you to approve it.
Okay.
Are we trying to get
We're trying to address the letter rather than broader
I've got
topics.
nothing more to say on the letter.
Okay.
So you're gonna go through public questions before?
No.
Okay. I'm supportive of the letter because I think if I hear the two agencies right, they're the ones who make the decisions. We're merely bringing a request to look at it, which seems entirely reasonable.
I would agree with that.
Agreed.
I agree.
Dan?
Yeah, I kind of like to talk about other options. Maybe I missed, there has been some other suggestions about local, maybe more local sites for food composting, but I guess it was rejected. Maybe it could be pushed a little further. I'm happy to approve the letter just to move forward the concern. Ultimately, the ratepayers will decide.
That's right. Okay. So all in favor of approving the letter as written? All opposed? 7-0. Thank you.
Can I say one quick thing?
Okay.
I urge the council, if you have questions, please come to me. I am the expert on the coast side. I've been doing this for 36 years, and I can give you the information you need.
I really
Okay?
appreciate everybody coming today, especially the people who know everything about this. And I think the fact that we're opening a dialogue with you is very positive. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is also pretty meaty regarding issues involving Highway 1, including the crosswalk, Connect the Coast Side, and highway maintenance. And I'm trusting that Len will keep us well organized on this.
So at the last MCC meeting, there was discussion about the Moss Beach crosswalk. Since that time, we have had further discussions with the different agencies and parties involved. This was done primarily by Claire and myself. And that includes conversations up to this afternoon. So this is primarily to share information about what's happening there, what we've learned, both in terms of status to date and where we go from there. And it's intended to inform the council about that and the public to take questions. So we're not bringing anything, basically more than further information, further input and considerations on where we might go from here, what to expect from what's there to date. In that same vein, we're going to talk about Connect the Coast Side. This is a project that is going into public review. And again, this is to give an update of the process. And this is an item with extremely long history and a lot of impact for the coast side. So it's important for the council as well as the public to begin to think what kind of review and information do we want to undertake here. And this is really just an opening in that area. And finally, there's been some concern about the road repair south of the tunnel. So we have a most recent update from Caltrans about that. So,
Excuse me, Len, for just clarification, Moss Beach Crosswalk and the SR1 road repair are Caltrans. What about Connect the Coast Side? Is that
that's
the
a county project.
County, okay.
That does cover state and county roadways. It's a comprehensive transportation management plan that looks at transportation avenues throughout the Midcoast.
So Caltrans isn't part of that?
I believe Caltrans, if I'm not mistaken, is on the technical advisory committee and has been involved with that primarily because their jurisdiction and roadways are contained within that plan.
We had another meeting over in Seal Cove, that the
We want
Caltrans put on.
to keep this focused here.
It was for safe crossings.
Sid?
That's why I asked.
Okay. This is primarily to follow up on last meeting's discussion and where we go from here. Both Claire and I've had discussions and we haven't really coordinated. Whoops, we've gone one slide too far. So I'll just give a quick thumbnail from what I've done. Claire will then add things she's also had conversations about. So basically, since the last meeting physically at the crosswalk, they've installed electronic signs, which we've all seen, to alert everyone to the presence of the crosswalk. In talking to both Caltrans and the crew on site, there's a recognition that the effort of painting the crosswalk and signing the crosswalk, which should have been well coordinated, weren't. The crew working on the sign installation did it. In speaking with them yesterday, they were beginning the sign installation, and then I reviewed that status with Caltrans, and I had expected some of those signs would be in, but none of the permanently planned signs are in there yet, and I don't know the cause for that delay.
They were working.
One is.
No, I was there just before the meeting, so there's no.
But they were up there.
One is.
One is there, and that's of the type they want. Now, basically, these are just static signs, no electronics. Basically, they're diamond shaped, and one to alert that you're within 125 feet of the crosswalk, and the second to say the crosswalk is right here. And that's the extent of the signage they plan, in addition to the alerts that are already in the two communities, Montara and Moss Beach, about entering a zone where people are crossing at various places. In terms of how this came to be, through conversations both with Mullen's office in Sacramento and here, there's acknowledgement that they forwarded the request from their staff to Caltrans. Caltrans acknowledges the request came in, and this was roughly 2 to 4 months ago. I don't have any precise item on that. And then began a review within Caltrans. The timing and how it came to be an actual project executed, we do not know. Mullen's office believed they had no further communication on this. It happens to be the case that the person who handled this no longer works in Mullen's office, so there's no ability to track that one down. But it's clear from Caltrans' standpoint it's there. They also recognize in looking at it that it represents questions exist about what they're going to install. So we're expecting that both the operations side will send a team to review it once installed. And we've also talked with the planning group, who also has expertise in that area. So expecting comments from them as well as comments from the public once in place. I think they're at some level candid. It's not, any parts of this are not perfect, but that's the information coming in to date about what we have and where it's at. So On that, if there's any questions about what we just covered there, if you have any more to add about that communication, Claire?
Well, we have been trying to coordinate. I think we were coordinated as of last evening, but this continues to be a work in process. We're constantly talking to one person or another. It does appear that it's unfortunate that the issue of Kevin Mullen's office got so confused. It does appear that there was a constituent who complained, and they routinely passed it on to Caltrans, as they do to other state agencies when complaints come in. They claim they put no further pressure on Caltrans, and that they don't have any pressure to put on Caltrans, but somehow this appears. Caltrans does say they did it. They do admit that it's inadequate. They do, as Len stated, plan to have some safety reviews on this. We're still talking, and we're not sure entirely how this is going to end up working out, but that's where we are. The rumor about somebody having an accident there, we've been unable to substantiate that. We don't know what the impetus for how this actually came to pass. We'd like to find out. At this point, we don't know. And I'm hoping that the highway patrol person can speak to this at some point. Obviously, you didn't know either. One of the things that I'm concerned about from you is the fact that it's there. It is a safety issue, and I would like to make sure that you guys will pay special attention to it.
We're on it as far as the CHP management, coordinating with Caltrans, because obviously the biggest issue is the safety concern, especially with the speed limit. So I'll get more information on that, what the status is, and we'll go from there. And I apologize for I've been out on injury, so I just got back. But I will meet with my management to figure out what is moving forward with this project. But the biggest thing is the concern is with the safety aspect of the crosswalk. And that's going to be our #1 primary concern with that. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Turn it back to Lynn.
Sure. So,
Can I ask for a quick clarification?
Yeah, let's
What
go to
you
the
said,
council first.
Claire, did I understand you to say that Caltrans acknowledges the crosswalk is not up to standard?
Yes.
I didn't want to put that in the minutes if it wasn't the case.
Yeah, that's correct, isn't it?
But they represented as issues, they did not formally say it's not up to standard.
Jeff said that to me.
And this is basically the public information officer. So I would not put in the up to standards as a formal statement from Caltrans, just that they have concerns. Okay, going around the council, anything?
My concern is the same, 50 miles an hour flying through Moss Beach, and all of a sudden somebody's in the crosswalk. It's just waiting for somebody to get hit.
Understand. Anybody?
Yeah, I mean, the electronic signs that are currently up there are clearly not permanent. So when those come down, my main concern is that whatever replaces them, it sounds like it's going to be just non-lighted signs, which
That's correct.
to me is not adequate for this
Right.
crosswalk.
Yeah, I would agree.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, the issue is that, everybody knows there's a need for some safe crossing there, so the issue is continuing conversation about what is best. It seems like someone's pushing forward what they want, which may not be exactly what the community wants. So we need to, I think we need to focus on having a discussion with the community as to what will be the best crossing that location.
The community studied this in great detail 3 years and 4 years ago. It was part of a final list of recommendations, including a crosswalk at Virginia.
This is not the crosswalk that was approved, and I don't
Let me finish.
agree.
Let me finish, please.
with you.
Let me finish. You can look that up. That's all formally there. It was a process that was concluded. It was prioritized in a list of 3 levels, the first of which was Great Whale Cove. As we all know, that hasn't happened yet, and basically it's been stuck there. Furthermore, there has been indication from Supervisor Horsley's office that it's just not likely to happen. And the second part, which we're gonna get to.
What is
next-
not likely to happen?
Let me
Safe
finish.
crossing.
The crossing.
Public input, they've circumvented.
I'm sorry, I'm difficult following you, man.
I'm
What
just
is
trying,
not- what
this
is
is a
not-
difficult area to follow. So let me,
Step by
all I
step.
want to say now in response is it sits in a queue of projects that are recognized, but it's way down in the queue. So there's very little likelihood of that coming up for funding and construction anytime soon.
They already built it.
Let me finish. In the interim, the county, at the same time they brought this crossings project to us, initiated a project called Connect the Coast Side, which was dealing with this at a larger issue. The two were happening at the same time, which caused considerable confusion in the public as both were doing workshops and talking about sort of the same thing. And I think that's also recognized by the county. Connect the Coast Side has been basically in hibernation for 3 years and is just coming forward for public comment. So that's the place where that comes. This particular effort came by a different offshoot, public sending some comment to Mullen's office. Somehow in the Caltrans machine, it turned into this, what's put there, and there's no connection between what the county, the community asked for and was designed and what's put there.
Clearly.
Go ahead.
Clearly, yeah.
Okay.
So I think that we should have discussions here at the council about, with the community, and
The discussions of those are beginning with the Connect the Coast Side, and we'll get to that next, and then we can decide where to go from there.
Basically, you're saying Kevin Mullen's office circumvented the entire.
No, we're not
That's
saying,
not-
we're not saying that.
It did sound that way.
No. There's two parts here.
Yeah.
One is they received comments from the public and they forwarded it to a relevant agency. The short circuit there, which I think in the communications we've had with both the Sacramento local office, is when you deal with our roadway here, it's an object of great sensitivity and it's important to us and to stay connected there. We pointed them to the upcoming review of the Connect the Coast Side study, and they've come back to us to indicate they'll follow that closely, so that connection's been improved. But the review of roads and road priorities is now comes through the funnel of the Connect the Coast Side study that's coming forward. I think our concern right now is this crosswalk is there in place, and once in place, we have to quickly come back and say either it's a safe crossing or it's not a safe crossing.
If I can,
Go ahead.
if I can, I think you're putting it very, very nicely. I do think there are two separate issues here. One is overall planning, and I think everybody is right now, as of today, buying into we have to focus on Connect the Coast Side and use a standard process to do these things, which is part of what we wanted to get was a process. And the other piece is what's gonna happen with this actual thing that they painted on the road. So they're really two different issues, but we're trying to follow up on both of them. So I'll turn it back over.
I can't avoid replying to that. Connect the Coast Side has nothing to do with safe crossing.
That's right.
Zilch, nada,
They're
nothing.
separate.
Well, I disagree with that on the reading of Connect the Coast Side and what's there so far.
What's
And the-
required by the LCP
Yeah.
and what that project is signed up for with the consultants has nothing to
So,
do with safe
Okay,
crossings.
we'll cover that next, and we can share our opinions on it. Okay. Anything more about the crossings? Effectively, what we're saying is that our next action step is when the crossing is finished, to immediately weigh whether it looks safe. We've heard the highway patrol say they want to look at it that way. Two different parts of Caltrans does, and I think the public would. So,
Well, as far as Caltrans, obviously they're gonna do a safety review, and their engineers do all that. As far as the CHP's role is mainly law enforcement, so making sure, and we don't tell the engineers what to put out, they do all that. As far as our concern is, making sure that people, drivers going through the area are yielding to pedestrians and driving at the safe speed. So speed enforcement, enforcing the pedestrian signage is where the CHP comes into play. And once this project is done is when we can insert ourselves in that area and do enforcement.
okay, yes?
I just have one comment. A lot of comments have been made about the safety of the crossing for people to cross. But there's also the safety for the cars coming because.
Could you come up to the podium so we can get your comment?
Hi, I'm Dolores Silva, and I was just adding this additional concern that people haven't been talking about, which is there's there's a safety issue for pedestrians, but there's also a safety issue for the cars coming on Highway 1. And not everybody sees those signs. And one of my neighbors had an issue where she wasn't even at the crosswalk, but some car saw her, and he was slowing down, but there were 50-mile-an-hour cars behind him. You know, this is it's just really bad, and it needs to be dealt with immediately. Not, you know, that's my concern.
Just to clarify, I do have one additional, thank you, speaker slip on this issue, but I'd like to finish Len's presentation because it is complicated.
Well, we're just gonna stay with the crossing right now and then go to other things after that, so.
So Chris, you want to speak now?
I would like to speak now, yeah. Okay, thank you for the letter that you sent 2 weeks ago. I think it's important that you sent that letter because this stinks to high heaven. And so they're scurrying around fixing this problem that they made. Caltrans was quoted in the paper saying they expedited this thing. Okay, this wasn't in the process for months or whatever. They're quoted as saying they expedited it. Mullen's spokesman is quoted in the paper as saying, oh yeah, we happened to talk to Caltrans about it. Question for the MCC, has the MCC received any direct communication, written communication from Kevin Mullen's office about this since you sent the letter?
Yes.
And what did that say?
It is part of an ongoing discussion as to what they actually did, and basically the upshot of it is they referred on a constituent complaint.
Did they know anything about this?
No.
They're claiming they knew nothing about it.
Right.
Okay, that's what I'm talking about. So I have no confidence.
Wait, Chris.
Yeah.
They know about it, they don't know why the crosswalk went in.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Where is this letter or this text or whatever it is? How come it's not on the MCC website? Why doesn't the public know about this?
There are about like 20 letters and not 20 pieces of communication that have gone back and forth.
I have no confidence in this process of anything going forward, of any of the actors or agencies involved in this, because we're not getting the full story. Mullen's office, and the person that handled this is suddenly not there anymore. Please, we're all adults here, okay? I understand the MCC's position as an agency that has to maintain relationships, but this is total BS, and the path is clear because these agencies have made public comments, and I'm very disappointed that the MCC has received comments from Kevin Mullen's office claiming that they're not involved in this in some way, and apparently you have received it. I'm sorry, what?
They stated what their involvement was.
I want to see these communications because I'm not buying any of this. Okay, so question going forward then is Caltrans going to expedite many more safe crossings? Why did they expedite this? Why did they expedite this? I want to know, and I feel like some of the communications that offer differing explanations lead me to believe that there's something hanky going on here. And I think as residents here, taxpayers, people that support the MCC and come to these meetings, I want to know how it is that this project got expedited in such a way. Why was it so important for Caltrans to expedite this that they violated their own standards and put in an illegal and unsafe crosswalk? Caltrans doesn't expedite anything without intense political pressure put on them. Look at Surfers Beach, where they weren't going to do anything until it was 2 feet from the road, and they got pressure from various legislators. We got Devil's Slide. There's a orange cone eroded where the road is eroded. That's not expedited. We've been looking for these crossings for 10 years. That hasn't been expedited. But suddenly,
Chris, you've got your
I'm not sure that you do. I'm not sure that you do.
Chris, hold on. I do. Just keep it civil. I'll respond back.
Civil?
Your time is up, Chris. Thank you.
Now, let me make one thing clear to the public. The only concern I have right now about the crossing, since I don't have any ability to tell them not to do more, like put the signs in, is to observe, and once the crossing is installed, to have it inspected for safety. So I've been up there twice each day since they began to do it, and as soon as it's there, we know who to call to do it. I personally agree that it looks unsafe, that the 50-mile-an-hour speed limit sort of comes right up to the edge of limits that are there, but because it's not a 4-lane highway, it may not cross them. But our main concern is quick action. not to schedule another discussion someday. So that's my number one priority here.
I'm sorry, Lynn, it weakens the credibility of the MCC in the eyes of the public when there's clearly something wrong here, expedited an illegal and unsafe crossing, and we're not getting all of the information.
We're trying to fix it, and we probably shouldn't be engaging in a dialogue back and forth at this point either, but Sid, you have 3 minutes?
I don't know if I'll be taking 3 minutes. Sid Young, Moss Beach. I attended the Safe Crossings thing that Caltrans put on over at the Seal Cove Inn 3, maybe 4 years ago. I don't know what they did with that study, but
that was
apparently
not,
Kevin Mullen
me,
has.
Sid,
What?
That was not Caltrans. That was a county study.
They were there.
Caltrans was there. It was a county study.
Okay, but even so, Caltrans participated. We all filled out online forms of what we thought was best. They talked about all kinds of issues, and all of a sudden this crappy, ill-painted crosswalk just appears. Obviously, Kevin Mullen pulled some strings, and he got his office to expedite it. But they completely circumvented our community. That's what I'm sure you're objecting to. I'm objecting to it. And you want to play nice with them, but I don't think this is the time, because we've had so many meetings on this subject. And all of a sudden, this crappy crosswalk appears that's not even safe.
Thank you.
Meanwhile,
So,
I hope to hear what the erosion issue is that they haven't dealt with since February.
That's
Thank you, Sid.
coming up. So in conclusion, the only priority I feel the MCC should have in terms of immediate action is to have the intersection inspected and either declared safe or not. So that's to me the highest priority for action we can take. And if anybody has other thoughts about it, we should bring them up.
I think this is a fine time to request yet again that the speed limit there be dropped to 45 miles an hour. The last time a speed study was done, Caltrans said, well, the accident rate doesn't seem to justify it. We could drop it to 45 without having any issues with radar because they can't drop speed limits to below a point at which 85% of the traffic is. They said they could have done that, but they didn't want to. I think this is not tonight, but I think this is a good time to restart that request.
With everybody I've talked to on all the different levels, I've consistently said we need to drop the speed limit, we need to have a median refuge. And people are listening. This is so complicated. I agree with Len, we need to make sure it's finished and safe, and then we deal with the rest of the stuff.
Okay. Bill?
I just want to, Bill Keogh, Moss Beach again. I just want to follow up on something that Dave just said, and it was mentioned at the meeting 2 weeks ago. I remember when Horsey was there and they did the speed study and said they couldn't drop it down because of the 85% rule. However, somebody else mentioned it, but I used to commute to Santa Cruz, and it used to be 45 miles an hour through Davenport, and they dropped that down all the way down to 30. And that's pretty much, actually it's more open than even Moss Beach is. There's only, I think, 2 crossroads through there. So I don't know when that other rule was all of a sudden changed, that now we can't go below 45. I mean, I would take 45 because it's 45 from Devil's Slide all the way down to the airport, and then again after,
It's 50 from Montero to the airport.
no, it's from basically Moss Beach, 14th Street. It goes up to 50. Okay.
We are trying very hard to make that point.
Yeah, and also what you just said too, Claire, I remember from tons of meetings, having, cross one lane at a time with the safety meridian, that was a big push that the community wanted. And Glenn, you were at all those studies too.
Right. I believe when that study was going on, there was a final survey by the county, and you were recommending that people vote no choice.
I was recommending that they vote no
No
choice.
choice. There were options, and you said none of the above was the option you pushed for.
Because most people at that point, I believe, I don't have all the details, were going for the crossing at California, and all of a sudden they changed it.
No, there were multiple options, and you asked them
We
to
don't-
put in no choice.
I'd like to see that information. If you have it, send it to me,
Sure.
because I think you're mistaken.
Okay,
It's not a key point right now.
okay. So, any further questions on the
I don't
motion?
think I used up my whole 3 minutes,
No,
so
but, no,
I just
no,
want to
no.
bring one thing up. There, in Montera, they have a middle lane, so when people pull out onto the highway, they can accelerate when it's safe. We don't have that in Moss Beach. So if they're going to change the speed limit, they should at least consider making acceleration lanes for people like me that are pulling out of Cypress to go north. There's no way to get out of there.
Okay, thank you, Sue.
And
We need to move on.
I'm just saying,
We need to move on.
you guys should be thinking about that instead of worrying about
Okay.
lowering speed limits and all. It would help
Okay.
a lot.
Next. So, Connect the Coast Side. After a 3-year hiatus, Connect the Coast Side, which is in fact the Comprehensive Transportation Management Plan, dictated by the Coastal Commission as part of our last LCP, and long delayed, is being brought forward. The very first step of that is a draft review by the Technical Advisory Committee. On that committee are 3 people from the MCC, Claire, myself, and Dave. I think there are 2 people from Caltrans, both safety and operations, and several other people. In terms of where it goes from that, until we have that meeting, we don't have any further input. We know that there's a study session planned by the Planning Commission, and the pathway that it has to go through will be both a TAC review, a Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors review and vote. Prior to that, the MCC itself and the public in a more general session will hear about it. And the Coastal Commission will be an ultimate authority to determine whether to accept it. Now, the issue of what's happened here, and this is just as a summary statement, is they've issued a document that attempts to bring all of the program work that's been done, and both on Connect the Coast Side, as well as some of the touch points of our crossing study, and put it into one document to wrap things up in a fairly long list of items. So that's not operational. I think what we're talking about here is some ideas as an offshoot of that, whether it's can you change the speed limit quickly or other things may have a place there. But that would be a separate track from what they're trying to do with this, which is to meet the LCP requirement, but also put forward a long-range plan. So any other questions about this at this point?
We'll have more to say about that after.
Yeah.
Not a question, but I don't think you actually said, the statement was made in the agenda for this, that this is the final draft of the CTM.
Okay.
The implication being that they have decided everything else that needs to be done.
Okay.
Is the Technical Advisory Committee meeting open to the public?
No, it's not.
Did you say there's a date for that?
What's that?
Is there a date for that?
Yeah, September 16th.
16? The
5 days
2016?
from now.
Yeah. This is just,
Oh, 2019.
well, I sort of blew that one, didn't I? Yeah, 2019.
It's
The
been
last
3
one was
years since the
2016.
last update.
Just
That's
trying
why
to-
2016.
Good catch.
And I do believe there will be a public meeting before the document goes
Oh,
to.
Yes.
we
there
expect
will.
there will be multiple meetings about it at
Right.
different levels, so this is just the very opening point. Okay? And we'll also find out at what point we have a document that can be shared by the public on our site. And finally, in terms of the SR1 road repair south of the tunnel, it's been funded for some time, but they still have design work in process before they will begin it. They're basically trying to give extra effort to the wall that they have to build to support the roadway.
Originally, they said October, before the rainy season
But
would start.
when they provided that information out of the information office, they didn't appreciate how long the design effort was going to take, and that's the story there. Okay? Okay.
Okay.
So that's it.
So that's,
Excuse me,
so,
Len,
Yes.
do you have any information as far as, road maintenance, basic 101 road maintenance is if you have a crack in the road, you fill it to prevent more water from going down. Do you have all your discussions through this? Do you have any reason as to why they have not fill the crack in the road, so
Because
that
they
more
don't
water,
want-
we're going into the rainy season now, so that more water doesn't go in the crack and undermine the road, bed.
They don't want to begin their work there until they have a design they think is ready to complete the job, and they haven't.
Okay, so it's a bureaucratic reason
You
to
can
stall
either- well,
and potentially
No, what we just
allow
said,
the
another
road,
problem is we wish
get
they
worse.
spent more time on design, but,
They could put K-rail up so a car doesn't go over that edge.
okay.
They just fill it with.
We're just giving you a status
asphalt patch.
status update.
So question on that project, have they given any preliminary information about how long they think it will take and whether the lane will be closed while they do the repair?
Wish we had more answers, we're just letting you know what we've got so far. We are getting kind of late. The next two items, if we can move on to them, are relatively short. They both involve sending letters to other agencies regarding things that are happening on the coast side. Do you have my projection things ready to go, Dave?
Yes, I do. Just 1 second here.
Okay. Let me talk about the first one briefly. This is considering a letter to the Attorney General of California regarding the sale of Seton Coastside. Basically, the situation with this is that the hospitals, including Seton Coastside, were sold from a nonprofit status to a for-profit status a few years ago. And at that time, the Attorney General put conditions on the sale so that the hospitals would continue to provide the services that the community needed. Now that company has gone bankrupt, they're being sold to yet another company, and the Attorney General is having to review the conditions to see whether they'll still be required to provide certain community services. So we are asking that they do certain things, and that they're spelled out in the letter. And I can show you a couple pictures. As you see here on the main sign, this is in Moss Beach, that they do have 24-hour emergency medical services. They're very low level, but there is a doctor there 24 hours a day, and this is the only 24-hour-a-day medical facility between Daly City and Santa Cruz. There's a lot of ambulance traffic there, a lot of transportation of people here for various services, heavily used by the community. You see the bus stop sign, or you will the next picture. There's one of the people coming up, dropping people off for services. Go ahead. They have night services, as you can see, for emergency. Yeah, there's the bus stop sign. It's one of the more heavily used bus stops in the route. Next one. This is for the skilled nursing facility, nice outdoor place. And then the last couple, they do have rehabilitation services, which are open to the community. Physical therapy here, pretty nicely set up. They have good staff there. And then the last picture is also physical therapy. So what we are asking them to consider doing when they make the conditions are two things. One, regarding the 24-hour, or regarding the community services that are available to the public. We'd like them to keep some sort of urgent care there, because there is nothing else for 75 miles. Also, the physical and occupational therapy that's available to the community should continue and be expanded. And also, they have lab work and x-ray, which also should be continued and expanded and made available to the community, because we are isolated by geography and transportation. In terms of the skilled nursing facility, which is most of what they do, they have people there who need intensive long-term medical care, either for rehabilitation or for long-term maintenance. We are asking them to continue that. We have two concerns about it. One is that almost everybody that they have in that facility has Health Plan of San Mateo insurance, which does not pay enough to provide the services, so they're losing money, which is part of the big problem there. The opinion of most people is that the county is going to need to subsidize this, particularly because Most of the patients there are referred through the county. This particular facility is most generous of any place in the county in terms of accepting difficult patients and people with no insurance backup besides the Health Plan of San Mateo. They're a really seriously needed resource in the county. The county would be in bad shape if they closed. The other thing is that we would like local residents to have priority for admission to the skilled nursing facility, because otherwise they are sent either to other parts of the county or often other parts of the state, and that essentially loses all the contact with their family because of our isolation here. So that's what this letter says, is that we would like to ask them to do. And I'd like to ask for a motion to consider the letter.
I'll make a motion to consider the letter.
Second?
Second.
Let's go around and see if there's any discussion on this, Barbara.
I just have like a clarifying question. I understood there's a difference between urgent care and an emergency room.
Yeah.
Are you asking that they now start urgent care?
I'm asking that they continue to have some sort of 24-hour urgent medical care available, whether they want to call it an emergency room or an urgent care, I don't care.
They have this intermediate designation, standby
Standby.
emergency.
Part of the problem is licensure. They have to use certain terminology in order to have certain types of licensure for the hospital. In order to provide some of the other services like lab and stuff, they have to use certain terms. I don't really care what terms they use. I think we need the service.
Yeah, I just was wondering if there was a difference.
Yeah. Dave?
Well, I support the letter.
Lynn?
Yeah, I support that.
Support.
I just have a small clarification. It says the only provider between Pacifica and Santa Cruz. Does that mean they have it in Pacifica and in Santa Cruz?
They have lab and x-ray in Pacifica.
They do?
Yeah.
Okay.
But
So
no
it-
emergency facility.
Yeah, no, it's Daly City and Santa Cruz.
Right.
Tamara?
I'll support the letter.
Dan?
Yeah, the services are needed, so super glad.
So, all in favor
I
of,
think it was the
oh, where?
It didn't.
I may have forgotten.
Is this you?
Yeah, I was in such a hurry to
Okay.
talking
Chris?
to me while I was filling out this slip. All right, so I got to take a breath because this is a different topic, and thank you, council, for writing this letter. It's a critical letter, it's a critical issue, it's a critical piece of infrastructure from the coast side that we've somehow dodged the bullet twice now, and it just feels like each time gets narrower and narrower. All the things in the letter are great, with the one exception. I'm a little nervous about the, Claire, you're kind of a little cavalier on whether, I don't care what they call it, urgent care, emergency care. I think there is a difference, and Supervisor Horsley is on record as saying that he's fine with urgent care. I've had to be there for emergency care services at 3 in the morning. We can't go backwards from the level of service that is there now. And then Dave points out they've got some, intermediate term. I don't know what all the terms are either, but we can't go backwards in service because it's a very slippery slope, very fast. The only other thing I would like to, so I support the letter. Thank you for writing this letter. It's a critical, critical thing. The county's discussion of emergency services and emergency preparedness means nothing if we don't have something here on the coast side that offers some kind of emergency services. Because if there is an emergency, we're not all going to get a life flight helicopter over to Stanford Medical Center. Okay, so this is critical. I'm concerned about the emergency care language but I'm fine if you want to send this letter. But I need you to think about that because Horsley has said he's fine with urgent care. I'm not, and you shouldn't be either. The other thing, and I've mentioned this to the Planning Commission, the county puts tens of millions into Seton and Seton Coastside every year. Okay, so they should either go ahead and buy this thing and make it a county hospital, since they're already putting tens of millions into Seton up there for retrofitting and whatnot. And then we're talking about supplementing the skilled nursing facility. They're already putting tens of millions in. They should take ownership of this. Or, as they have over the hill, let's talk to LAFCO and talk about getting a hospital district created for us over here. I guess they're good enough for a hospital district over on the other side of the hill, Palo Alto, Burlingame and whatnot, but I guess we're not good enough for one over here, because that's what it seems like. It's not even discussed. Supervisor wrinkled his eyes at me as if he didn't know what and we had the CEO of Seton in here last year who professed to have no idea what a hospital district was. Okay, so this thing can go away in a split second. If it wasn't for Kamala Harris putting the hammer down on the 2 buyers previously, this thing would have already been parted out and gone, and there would be some kind of development there. We need this. Please keep that in mind. Thank you for this letter. Totally support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. I'm willing to offer an amendment to this letter, replacing the word urgent with emergency, because it is the only 24-hour urgent emergency care. And I think the wording does have some technical implications, but I'm happy to change it to emergency just to make it stronger.
24 hours.
Pardon me?
24 hours.
24-hour emergency care in the fourth paragraph. Seton Coast Site provides the only 24-hour emergency care.
I also move.
Okay. Second?
Second.
So we vote on the letter with the amendment? Or I vote for the amendment?
Vote on the amendment.
Okay, all in favor of the amendment to be 7-0. Are we ready to vote on the letter itself?
I have one thing to say in reply to Chris. So there are actually no hospitals anywhere in San Mateo County that are part of a hospital district. The Sequoia Hospital District has nothing to do with the hospital anymore. And there were good reasons for that. So I'm not convinced that's the way to go.
I'm not either. I don't really know much about it, but it's when people are, the CEO of the hospital and the supervisor are looking at me like they don't even know what that is, that leads me to believe that it hasn't been discussed or been summarily dismissed.
Okay.
But thanks, Dave. I appreciate that.
So we did not vote, did we? All in favor of the letter as amended? Did we already vote on it?
Yeah.
No, there we go.
Amendment, voting on the letter now.
As amended. Okay. 7-0. The letter will be sent.
MCC, thank you. I know I had some heated words and I still feel that way, but this is the Coast Side's body right here, and you are doing the Coast Side's work, and I really appreciate it. I got to run, but thank you, really. I hope we're still all friends, because I really respect everybody. I've been there. I respect what you're doing. I know it's hard. I know the relationships you got to maintain. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Chris.
Chris.
Appreciate that. Okay, the last one. I think I've got a few pictures on that one too, although they're, this is to support a grant that the Coastal Conservancy asked us to support their application for. What they want to do, and I don't think we even actually need the pictures. The new parking lot that was put in at Montero State Beach, apparently there's no decent access from the parking lot to the actual beach. People are, some of you have been there, maybe know this better than I do, but apparently people are like scrambling down the bluffs and through the creek and everything. So they would like to make it safer, and they would like to protect the land and the wildlife, and so they want to put in some sort of stairs or something. The grant is actually for planning exactly what they're going to put in. You can see how eroded it is there near the red arrow. So they're asking us to support their grant application, which I don't think is a big problem.
So basically, give no further efforts to the existing one that doesn't get there, put a new one in a different location.
I'm not sure.
Yes, that is what they are proposing. So the existing one is where it says closed, and I can attest it is pretty hard to get to the bottom of the
I can't
stairway.
read any of the writing. Could you say,
Yeah.
show me which?
This over here is
That's
where
the
the stairs
existing
used to be.
stairway.
Yeah.
And that sign is at the water below it. This is, it's very hard to see, I admit, but this is the bottom of the stairway now. It used to be down here.
I can't make any of that out.
Well,
So what you're
look
saying,
on the
could you go
website
back,
so
could you
can
go
look at it.
backwards, please? Back to, yeah. So, the red arrow on the left is the existing stairwell, and it's collapsed, it's closed?
Yes.
Yes, although it's still heavily
So they're
used.
proposing to build a new stairwell on the right?
Yes.
Near the red arrow and the yellow star.
In that narrower valley, which does not have a stream in it, it's just an erosion channel.
Any other questions or comments on this?
The left creek, by the way, if you aren't familiar with it, is Martini Creek. That's where Martini Creek enters the ocean.
And the fact that people are climbing through it is not a good thing. Should we go around the
Climbing
table?
through
and-
the culvert, is that what you said?
Pardon me?
Climbing through the
No,
culvert?
there's a sort of a temporary pathway people have created around the closed end of the stairway.
Barbara, do you have any comments or questions on this?
No, I'm absolutely in favor of it. I think they've done some really nice improvements at Montero's, so I'd like to see them keep doing it.
Dave?
I support it.
Lynn?
Yeah, I actually just went there for the first time, I don't know, a couple months ago, and they have a really nice new parking lot, and it looks so nice, and you can park there and then follow the trail. And it's not even until you get to the end of the trail, where the stairway starts, that you see this like faded, kind of looking, temporary looking sign saying it was closed. So I was like really confused when I went there and not sure if I still saw people going down there and wasn't sure if I was able to or not. And then, yeah, I saw that you have to cross the creek, which, you know, is probably filled with bacteria and stuff. So I didn't go down there, but I just think it's really confusing for visitors. You know, me as a local, but a relatively new local, was confused by it. I think when visitors come, it's not safe for them to be coming and, you know, going down the stairway anyway, even though it's, you know, has that small sign saying it's closed. So I definitely feel like that this needs to be prioritized as a project, and I'm fully in support of this grant.
To clarify, they did have another closure sign at the top, but like
Oh.
many such signs, it was removed by some vandal.
Got it.
Yeah, I support the letter.
Dan?
Yeah, support.
All in favor of the letter approving?
Did
we
anybody
make a
actually
motion?
move yet?
Oh, I'm sorry. Do we have a motion to approve the letter?
I'll move to support it, to approve it.
I'll second.
All in favor? All opposed? No. Okay. So that has been approved. The next item is council activity. Barbara?
I already reported mine.
Dave?
I have nothing else to report.
Lynn?
So I've been in touch with the Coastal Conservancy and the county about a meeting to meet with an Air Force representative at Pillar Point to discuss the recently undertaken and mostly finished for this phase improvements in terms of erosion control, but it also improves the trails there considerably. And the Air Force, I believe, has agreed to do this, but they have not yet set a date for it. But this is probably the first time I think we've actually, if they come, just ask them to come here, that would be a first for that, and I think it is maybe a nice touch for Pillar Point.
I went to 2 meetings. One was on the Seton issue, and the other, and I did speak and said basically what's in the letter, because we have discussed it before. I felt okay about doing that. I also went to the Half Moon Bay City Council and gave our usual update, and the council was actually quite interested in what we were doing with Montara Mountain and also with the crosswalk. Michelle?
I wasn't able to attend any meetings, but I did watch the 2-hour meeting from last night on the Carrillo Unified School District and the funding issues that they're facing. It seems like there's a pretty large budget shortfall that, you know, over somewhere in the range of $2 to $4 million, I think. You know, they're going to basically have to cut a lot of programs across the school district. They will be, according to the superintendent, they won't be cutting any teachers, but they will be cutting a lot of administrative staff, a lot of programs, and there will be a ballot initiative in November to help close the gap. Although even if that does pass, there'll still be a pretty big gap in the.
I was at a meeting to clarify a couple of points about it. This was basically a precursor meeting to let the public know formally that in tomorrow's regular board meeting, they're gonna bring forward the budget situation, and that they expect for sure a shortfall in the neighborhood of 1.6 to 2 million. But also on the ballot, we've had a parcel tax in place for some time, and this is a renewal of the existing parcel tax as a measure that is on the ballot. Those for vote by now will come out soon. And that's basically would generate 1.6 million. If it does not pass, then the deficit would go up by 1.6 million in terms of their budget process. So taking it quite seriously. From the point of interest, we have, there are two school renovations, major renovations scheduled, and the comment on those is that those funds are still secure and basically in place to go ahead. They're going to review their overall construction plan to update it, but that funding doesn't seem at risk. Tamara and I had talked about meeting with the school district, except the people weren't there anymore, but talking briefly to the superintendent. I think he's open either to a meeting with us as two representatives, or we could see if we would like him to come and talk to the public. Now, the deal on having him come and talk, which he's open to do, is he could certainly speak to the funding and their intentions in a long-range sense for the schools.
I think we're getting a little bit off.
We actually went into the future, but that's the point there.
So that's for future agendas, but it's
Well,
a
I
good
get the
point.
future agendas
Yeah.
next.
Okay. Tamar? Dan?
No.
Okay. So, future agendas.
Okay, so to finish what I almost finished, I think the question of whether it would be helpful for him to come and whether he could is an interesting one to explore a little bit. Basically, he's enjoined by law not to advocate for the parcel tax, but merely to provide information about it. And the Midcoast particular interest I have is both the security and the timing of the funding to work on the schools. So I think after a conversation with him, we might decide whether that's useful for us.
Barbara, any agenda ideas? You put a lot of work in on this one.
Just looking into internet at the office, I contacted Ellie, and Ellie contacted the airport. There is AT&T service there, so anyway, I'm looking into that and making an agenda out of it. But not for the next meeting, not ready.
Dave?
The question I have relative to the items we just looked at in terms of the crossing, because I've basically just been back here 2 days, and Claire and I worked with a lot of conversations. I didn't feel in a position to generate a letter. My impression was that they're closing on these signs quickly, and so that's why inspecting and then asking for them to inspect and make some statement about it seems something to do almost on a constant stay-in-touch basis. If after that there's a reason why we want a letter sooner than to the next regular meeting, I can do it, but I feel they're responsive to what we're saying there. It was great to have the highway patrol there as well, so that's my current plan.
We do have the Chamber of Commerce coming to talk to us about business climate and next time, and we may want to consider a way to bring into that somehow or other the fact that the CDRC is trying to take on overview of new commercial building, and there is some thought that we would like to use, some people would like to use this whole process as a way to improve neighborhoods serving businesses in preference to either more housing or more tourist serving facilities. So that may be something we could weave into her presentation. I have to think about it. Yeah.
Nothing.
Dan?
So the Chamber of Commerce is going to come here to speak on the commercial activity at the coast side?
Basically. And what, I asked her to...
They must have an agenda. That sounds very interesting.
Yeah, it would be interesting. They're
So
wanting to talk to all different community groups just to improve their visibility. I've asked them to particularly focus on neighborhood business in the Midcoast and how that can be served. or promoted.
Yeah. Well, they have their interests that may not be
They do.
Well, actually, in Moss
in
Beach.
agreement with
So,
ours.
so we can't really discuss the agenda item, it's not on the agenda.
Okay. All right, so. Do I have a motion to
Motion to
adjourn?
adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
15 minutes early, I'll point out.
You're kidding.
Didn't
I
feel
thought
like
I
it.
thought it must be midnight by now.